10 best transfers so far. Obviously, there's not been too many, so fleshing out a top 10 was a bit of a stretch. Now, 10 and 9, I've got Tigers players, so you could say this is biased, but the two Wigan boys, Gildart and Hastings, they're really surprise packages, as most Super League signings are for NRL clubs, but I'd assume they're not on a big salary packet. And I think they can add some much needed class to this Tigers outfit. Hastings, whether he plays a middle forward role, whether he plays hooker, whether he actually does play in the halves, I think he's going to add something to the Tigers. He's going to, get the fans buzzing a little bit. And I'm interested to see what he does for the team. He's a very, very good on-field leader as well. And Gilbert's an exciting young centre, which is a position the Tigers really, really need to address. So I'm really, really interested to see how those two go next year. Number 8, I've got Brent Naden to the Dogs. He's sort of a forgotten man at Penrith. I thought he was a really, really influential player in their season last year, and he seemed like one of the most damaging centres in the game on the offensive side of the ball. So I think the Bulldogs have done pretty well to nab him. Obviously, we don't know the salary, so it's hard to judge them in terms of value, but I can see him being a pretty solid contributor to the Doggies. Number 7, I've got Matt Dufty. I think this would be higher in other people's lists, but not the biggest fan of Matt Dufty. He's a good player, but I don't think he's going to change the team as such. But he's definitely an upgrade of what they've currently got, and his pace is enough to make him a weapon at any time in the game. And I think he's going to be a solid addition to the Doggies' backline. 6, I've got Adam Reynolds, similar to Dufty. I think a lot of people would have this higher, but I just think it's a little bit overrated. It's going to be interesting to see how he goes. I think there's enough talent around him for him to do well, but it's going to be interesting to see how he goes isolated from that Rabbitohs setup. Obviously, the Rabbitohs have surrounded him with a lot of talent his whole career, so he's sort of just had to be a game manager with a bit of a kicking game. So now it's going to be interesting to see whether he can be a bit more creative and help a young side out. So that's going to be interesting to see. One that actually slipped through the cracks, I only saw this the other day, Peter Hiku to the Cowboys. For me, that's my number 5. I think Peter Hiku is a seriously underrated player. He had a ridiculous amount of try involvements last year, tries and try assists for the Warriors. This year, he's missed basically the whole year. I think he did his knee in round 1, but he's still got a fair few years left in him. I think he's only 26, 27, and I think that's a solid pickup from the Cowboys. Astute signing, I'd have to say. Number 4, I've got Xavier Coats, and if this wasn't the Melbourne Storm signing, it might be a little bit lower, but I can just see him absolutely carving it up for the Storm. They've had such success with tall outside backs, whether it be Vunivalu, whether it be Adokar, whether it be Inglis, whether it be Folau, and I can just see him dominating already. He's fast, he's tall, he's an athlete, really. He can jump and, jump on anyone's head pretty much. So, he's just going to give them another dimension next year, which is pretty scary. Number 3, I've got Kurt Capewell, the Brisbane Broncos' other major signing so far. I think he's a pretty astute signing. And although back row, it's an arguable position to sign a good player because, sometimes back rowers don't have much impact on games. But I think Kurt Capewell is a very, very good player. We've seen it in the Origin arena. He's filled in at centre and he's been very, very good at that. And I think he's a very, very solid player, which is what the Broncos need right now. I think they've got enough flair and class and youth in their team. And I think they just need some solidity to fill out the rest of the positions. And they can hopefully nurture the upcoming talent. Number 2, I've got Nico Hines. It's going to be an interesting one for the Sharkies. It's a big risk. Sounds like he's on some good money after really only starring for 2 months for the Storm, but he was so impressive in those few rounds. And any player coming from the Storm, you sort of trust signing players from the Storm's a tough one because often they leave the Storm and they flop because they're not in that environment anymore. But for them to be at the Storm that long, they're obviously a very good character and they're obviously a very good player. So there's definitely upsides to signing him. And I think he's going to be a good addition. He's going to play 6, you'd imagine. So it's going to be interesting to see how he kicks and stuff like that. We haven't seen too much of that. But I'd be excited if I'm a Sharkies fan. I think he brings a bit of class, which they lack right now. Maybe a bit harsh, but And then number 1, I've got Matt Burton. I think this is an absolute steal from Trent Barrett. Not sure how much he's getting paid, but I think Burton's someone you could set your team up for the next 10 years. I think he's an incredible player. He's got a damaging boot. He's got a good running game. And although he's faltered a few times when given a halves berth for the Penrith Panthers, I think, that can be put down to a lack of experience. And I think when he's given the reins to a team all by himself, it might take a few weeks to adjust, a few years maybe. But I think in the long run, we're going to look back at this signing and say, geez, that was smart from Trent Barrett, and what a player Matt Burton's become, because I really think this kid is going to be an absolute freak. So that's my 10 best transfers so far in this, well, it's not even the NRL season, but so far this NRL season.
It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! What about that one? Unbelievable! Balotelli, Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle.